Hey everyone, I'm Sarah, a 25-year-old graphic designer hustling to make it in the concrete jungle of Chicago. My apartment may be tiny, but it's mine, and I've been grinding hard to save up for something big, a top-tier laptop that'll level up my freelance game. Now let me tell you about my family. It's complicated, especially with my older sister, Emma. She's been a thorn in my side since we were kids, constantly trying to one-up me, green with envy over every little thing I did. I remember winning a school art contest once, and instead of congratulating me, Emma just rolled her eyes. Big deal. Anyone can scribble on paper, she said. That's what I dealt with growing up. Hey Sarah, why don't you show Emma your drawing? My mom would say, oblivious to the tension. Emma would sneer, yeah, let's see what the little artist can do. And don't even get me started on our parents, Tom and Linda. They practically had a sign on the door saying, Emma's #1 fan club. It was always Emma this, Emma that, while I was over here working my butt off, feeling invisible. Dad, guess what? I'd try to share something at dinner, but he cut me off. Emma, sweetie, how was school? Emma would flash a smug smile. Oh, just aced another test. No big deal. But I didn't let it get to me. I kept my head down and worked hard. In the end, it paid off. I landed a scholarship to art school while Emma was still figuring things out. When I told her the news, she couldn't believe it. They must be desperate for students, she sneered. I tried not to let it get to me. Fast forward to today, and I finally saved enough to treat myself to a dream. A shiny new MacBook Pro, $3,000 worth of pure graphic design power. The day I hit that order button, I was on cloud 9. You sure about this, Sarah? My best friend Mike asked. That's a lot of cash. I've never been more sure of anything, I told him. This is my moment. My birthday finally arrived and my family came over for a small celebration. Mom and Dad brought a cake and even Emma showed up. Happy birthday, sis, she said, handing me an envelope. Inside was a $100 gift card. Emma stood there grinning like she'd just given me a fortune. Wow, thanks, Emma. That's really generous, I said, trying to be nice. Well, I spare no expense for my little sister, she replied with fake sweetness. Then there was a knock at the door, and my heart skipped a beat. I knew what it was. I rushed to the door and came back with a large box. My new laptop. I couldn't hide my excitement as I tore into the box like a kid on Christmas morning. There it was, sleek, shiny, and perfect. Isn't it beautiful? I held it up, beaming. That's when I noticed Emma's face darkening. How much did that cost? She asked, her voice tight. About $3,000, I admitted. Her eyes widened in disbelief. $3,000. Who spends that on a laptop? It's for my work, Emma. I've been saving up. I started to explain, but she cut me off. Oh right, your work, she sneered, making air quotes. Because little Miss Perfect needs the fanciest toys to doodle on. It's not doodling, Emma. It's graphic design. It's my career. The tension in the room was unbearable. Mom and Dad looked uncomfortable as Emma kept firing off snide comments, each more biting than the last. I noticed she was hitting the wine pretty hard, refilling her glass again and again. Must be nice to waste money like that, she slurred at one point. Some of us have to work for a living, I do work, Emma, really hard. Please, sitting around playing on your fancy computer isn't work. I was about ready to snap. But Mom intervened. Girls, please, she said. It's Sarah's birthday. Let's try to get along. As the party began to wind down, I walked Mom and Dad to the door. Thanks for coming, I said, forcing a smile. And thanks for the cake. Of course, sweetie. Happy birthday, Mom replied, giving me a warm hug. I closed the door behind them and took a deep breath. All I had to do was say goodbye to Emma, and this nightmare of a birthday would finally be over. But when I turned back to the living room, Emma wasn't there. I heard a noise coming from my home office. Emma, I called, walking toward the sound. When I reached the doorway, I froze. Emma was in my office, stumbling drunk, with my toolbox open at her feet and a hammer in her hand. On the desk was my brand new laptop, or what was left of it. Emma, what are you doing? I screamed, rushing into the room. She turned toward me, her eyes wild and unfocused. We're even, she slurred, and before I could stop her, she raised the hammer one last time and brought it crashing down on my laptop with a sickening crunch. I stood there, paralyzed, staring at the wreckage of my hard-earned dream. Years of saving and work destroyed in a moment of drunken jealousy. The reality of what just happened hit me like a tidal wave, a whirlwind of rage, heartbreak, and an iron determination that this would be the last time Emma ever hurt me. My hands shook as I dialed 911, but by the time I got through to an operator, Emma had already stumbled out of my apartment. I tried explaining what happened to the cops, but without her there, it felt pointless. "We'll file a report, ma'am," the officer said over the phone, but without the suspect present. I knew what that meant, a slim chance of any real justice. I wasn't about to let it end there. I called my parents, hoping they'd back me up. "Mom, Dad, you need to tell the police what Emma did. You saw how she was acting." There was a long pause. Finally, Dad spoke. "Honey, Emma called us earlier. She said she left your party around 8 p.m. We can't lie to the police." My blood ran cold. "No, that's not true. She was here. She smashed my laptop. You know how she gets when she drinks." Mom chimed in softly. "Now, Sarah, I think you might be exaggerating. Emma would never do something like that. Maybe you had a little too much to drink yourself." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own parents were siding with Emma again, choosing her lies over my truth. "Fine," I said, my voice ice cold. "Believe what you want." I hung up, sinking to the floor, surrounded by the pieces of my shattered dreams. But as I sat there, something inside me hardened. I was done being Emma's punching bag, done with my family's blindness. It was time to expose Emma for who she really was. I called up my best friend, Mike. If anyone could help, it was him. "Mike, I need your help. It's about Emma." "What did she do this time?" Mike asked, his voice laced with concern. I filled him in on everything. Mike let out a low whistle. "Damn, Sarah. That's messed up. What do you want to do about it?" "I want to catch her, expose her, make sure everyone sees her for the lying, manipulative person she really is." "All right, I'm in. What's the plan?" We spent hours brainstorming. Mike's tech skills were going to be key. "First things first," he said, "we need to set up some surveillance in your place. Hidden cameras, mix, the works. Next time Emma comes over, we'll catch everything." "Good idea. What else?" "We'll create a fake social media account to keep tabs on her. I can also do some digging into her digital footprint, maybe even her financials. People like Emma usually have skeletons in their closets." Meanwhile, I had my own role to play. "I'll act like I've forgiven her," I said. "I'll get close again." Mike paused. "You sure you can pull that off?" I sighed. "I've been playing nice my whole life, Mike. I can do it a little longer." Over the next few weeks, we put our plan into action. Mike helped me install tiny cameras and microphones around my apartment, hidden in picture frames and potted plants. We created a fake Instagram account, Chicago Party Girl, and sent Emma a friend request. She accepted without hesitation. I reached out to Emma, pretending to be the forgiving sister. "Hey, Em, I've been thinking. I'm sorry about how things went down on my birthday. Can we talk?" Her response came quickly. "Sure, sis. I'm glad you've come to your senses. How about dinner next week?" I had to stop myself from throwing my phone across the room. Instead, I typed back, "Sounds great. Can't wait." And the game was on. Mike was working his magic on the digital front. Late one evening, he called me, excitement in his voice. "Sarah, you're not going to believe this," he said. "I think I found something big. Really big." My heart raced. "What is it?" "I can't say for sure yet, but it looks like Emma might be embezzling from her company. I need to dig deeper, but the numbers don't add up." Shock and a sense of vindication washed over me. This was it, our way to finally bring Emma down. As I prepared for our upcoming dinner, a mix of sadness crept in. How had it come to this? My own sister, my own family, but I pushed those feelings aside. Emma had made her choices, and now it was time for her to face the consequences. Little did she know, her world of lies was about to crumble, and I would be there to watch it burn. When Emma arrived for dinner, I played the part of the forgiving sister. Hidden cameras were rolling, capturing every word. "Thanks for coming, Em," I said, offering a smile. "I really want us to move past all this." "Of course, sis. Water under the bridge, right?" she said, casually brushing it off. We made small talk, but I skillfully steered the conversation toward my career. "You know, I've been getting some great freelance gigs lately, I said, watching her expression tighten. Clients love my work. Emma's jaw clenched. Oh, aren't you special? She sneered. Always the golden child. I pushed harder. Remember my birthday? That laptop was supposed to take my career to the next level. Her eyes flared with anger. You and your stupid laptop, she snapped. You think you're so much better than me, don't you? Well, I showed you. I smashed that thing to pieces, and I'd do it again. Bingo. I had her confession on camera. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was Mike. It's done. We had anonymously tipped off Emma's workplace and the authorities about her embezzlement. Within days, Emma's world imploded. She lost her job, faced criminal charges, and most significantly, our parents finally saw her for who she truly was. The video of her confession went viral, obliterating what remained of her reputation. A week later, I watched from my window as Emma moved out of her upscale apartment, jobless and alone. The satisfaction was bittersweet. Her toxicity had finally caught up with her. I turned back to my new laptop, ready to move on with my life and career. For the first time in years, I felt free from Emma's shadow. It was time to focus on my path, leaving behind the resentment and pain. As I started a new design project, I couldn't help but smile. This was my fresh start, my chance to shine without Emma's constant attempts to dim my light. The future was bright, and it was all mine. The story's over, but now I've got a question for you. If you were in my shoes, would you have exposed Emma's crimes or tried to help her change? Was justice served, or did I go too far? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'm really curious to hear what you would have done in this situation. If you enjoyed this wild ride, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories like this. Your support means the world to me and helps the channel grow. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.
My name is Chloe, and this is the story of how my life turned upside down, not once, but twice. I guess I should start at the beginning. I was born to loving parents, Mark and Lisa Smith, in a small suburban town. Dad was a journalist, and Mom worked as a nurse. We weren't rich, but we were happy. Life was pretty normal until I turned 12. That's when everything changed. It was a rainy Tuesday evening, and my parents were driving home from a dinner party. I was at home with my grandma, watching some silly cartoon when the phone rang. I'll never forget the chill that ran down my spine when I heard my grandma's muffled sobs from the kitchen. The next few days were a blur. Mom died on impact, they told us. Dad survived, but barely. When I finally got to see him in the hospital, he was a shell of the man I knew. His legs were crushed, and the doctors said he'd never walk again. Chloe, he croaked, reaching for my hand. I'm so sorry, sweetie. I'm so sorry. I didn't understand why he was apologizing. It wasn't his fault some drunk driver had plowed into their car. But as I grew older, I realized he was sorry for what our lives had become, for the struggles we'd face, for the mother I'd lost, for the father he thought he could no longer be. But my dad, Mark Smith, was made of stronger stuff than he gave himself credit for. Once he was out of the hospital and settled into his wheelchair, he threw himself into his work. He'd always been a talented writer, and now he channeled all his energy into his job as an editor at the city's major newspaper. As I entered my teens, Dad made sure I had everything I needed. He encouraged me to join clubs, to make friends, to have as normal a life as possible. But the truth was, I preferred spending time with him. We'd watch old movies together, argue about books, and he'd help me with my homework. When it came time for college, Dad insisted I go away to school. You need to spread your wings, kiddo, he said. Don't worry about me. I'll be fine. I was hesitant, but I knew he was right. So off I went to State University, majoring in accounting. It was there that I met Jessica, who would become my best friend. And through Jessica, I met her second cousin, Michael. Michael was kind, funny, and he didn't bat an eye when I told him about my dad. In fact, the first time he met Dad, they hit it off immediately, bonding over their shared love of classic rock. Your old man's cool, Michael told me later. And you're pretty amazing for taking care of him all these years. I shrugged it off, but inside, I was glowing. For the first time since the accident, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I could have a normal life. A life with love, laughter, and yes, even a family of my own someday. After graduation, life seemed to fall into place like pieces of a puzzle. I landed a job at the local tax service, and Michael started working as a long-haul truck driver. We dated for 2 years before he popped the question on a crisp autumn evening in the park where we had our first date. I was over the moon, but there was one thing I needed to make clear. Yes, Michael. But I can't leave my dad. He needs me. Michael's face broke into a wide grin. I wouldn't have it any other way. We'll all live together. Your dad's apartment is big enough for the 3 of us, right? The wedding was small but beautiful. Dad insisted on wheeling himself down the aisle to give me away. There wasn't a dry eye in the house. As I stood there, hand in hand with Michael, I felt like I was living a fairy tale. But every fairy tale has its villains, and mine came in the form of my mother-in-law, Karen, and sister-in-law, Emily. From the moment I met them, I could tell they didn't approve of me. "So, your father is handicapped?" Karen had asked during our first meeting, her nose wrinkling as if she'd smelled something unpleasant. "He's disabled," I corrected, trying to keep my tone neutral. "But he works as an editor, Anne." "How nice," she interrupted, clearly uninterested. "Michael, darling, are you sure about this? There are so many nice girls from good families." I felt my face burn with anger and shame. Michael, bless him, immediately jumped to my defense. "Mom, Chloe is from a good family. Her dad's disability doesn't change that. I love her, and that's all that matters." That shut Karen up, but I could see the disapproval lingering in her eyes. Emily, taking cues from her mother, was equally cold towards me. After the wedding, true to his word, Michael moved in with Dad and me. Our life fell into a comfortable routine. I'd go to work at the tax office, Michael would be on the road for days at a time, and when he was home, we'd all have dinner together. But whenever Karen and Emily visited, the atmosphere in our home changed. They'd strut around like they owned the place, barely acknowledging Dad's presence. Once, I overheard Karen muttering to Emily, "It's a shame. Michael could have done so much better. Now he's stuck with this girl and her crippled father. What if they have children? Can you imagine the genes?" I was furious, but I bit my tongue. For Michael's sake, I tried to keep the peace. But it was getting harder and harder. One evening, after a particularly tense visit from Karen and Emily, I broke down in tears. Michael found me in our bedroom, sobbing. Hey, he said, pulling me into his arms. "What's wrong?" "Your mom and sister," I hiccuped. "They hate me. They think I'm not good enough for you because of Dad." Michael's face hardened. "That's ridiculous. You and your dad are my family now. If they can't accept that, it's their problem, not ours." His words comforted me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of our troubles with Karen and Emily. As the months passed, Michael's trucking business began to flourish. He was always on the road, crisscrossing the country in his big rig. I missed him terribly when he was gone, but I threw myself into my work at the tax office and spent my evenings keeping Dad company. One crisp autumn evening, as I was helping Dad into bed, Michael called. His voice crackled with excitement over the phone. "Chloe, I've been thinking," he said. "How would you feel about buying a townhouse? It would be easier for your dad to move around in a wheelchair. He could spend more time outside. Plus, you could have a garden. Something to keep you busy when I'm on the road." The more he talked, the more I warmed to the idea. I glanced at Dad, who was pretending not to eavesdrop. "What do you think, Dad?" I asked, putting the phone on speaker. Dad's eyes lit up. "A garden would be nice," he admitted. "And it would be easier to get outside." That settled it. Over the next few weeks, we threw ourselves into house hunting. We finally found the perfect place, a spacious townhouse with wide doorways, a roll-in shower for Dad, and a beautiful backyard. Taking out a mortgage was scary, but with Michael's income and mine, plus the rent from Dad's old apartment, we managed to make it work. We moved in on a sunny Saturday in spring, and I'll never forget the look on Dad's face as he wheeled himself out onto our new patio. "This is perfect, sweetie," he said, his eyes misty. "Thank you." We spent the next few months settling in, making the place our own. I planted a small vegetable garden, and Dad would sit outside for hours, soaking up the sun and fresh air. It was idyllic. Then came the housewarming party. We invited friends, colleagues, and yes, Karen and Emily. The party was in full swing when they arrived, fashionably late as usual. They sauntered in, eyeing everything with barely concealed envy. As we moved through the house, I could see the wheels turning in Karen's head. When we reached the master bedroom, she turned to me with a sly smile. "You know, Chloe," she said, her voice low. "This would be perfect for Michael and me. Why don't you send your father to a nursing home? Then I could move in here." I felt like I'd been slapped. "Excuse me?" "Oh, don't look so shocked," Karen continued. "Your father isn't, well, he's not a whole person anymore, is he? He doesn't need all this luxury. A nursing home would be more than enough for someone in his condition." Before I could respond, Karen marched out to the patio, where Dad was chatting with some guests. To my horror, she grabbed the handles of his wheelchair and started pushing him towards the driveway. "Karen!" I shouted, running after her. "What are you doing?" "If he won't go to a nursing home, he can stay outside," she sneered. "That's what you wanted, isn't it? For him to be outdoors?" I was shaking with rage and disbelief. Thankfully, Michael had heard the commotion and came running. His face turned red with anger when he saw what his mother was doing. "Mom," he bellowed. "What the hell are you doing? Let go of Mark's chair right now." Karen looked shocked at Michael's tone. "But honey, I was just—" "I don't want to hear it," Michael cut her off. "You and Emily need to leave. Now." After they left, Michael apologized profusely to Dad and me. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I had no idea she would. I'm just so sorry." Dad reached out and patted Michael's hand. "It's not your fault, son. Some people, they just can't understand." Life settled into a new rhythm after the housewarming incident. Karen and Emily kept their distance, which suited me just fine. Michael threw himself into his work, taking on more long-haul routes to help cover our new mortgage. I split my time between my job at the tax office and tending to our home and Dad. 2 years passed in the blink of an eye. Our life fell into a comfortable routine. Michael was on the road more often than not, but when he was home, our little family was happy. Dad's health was stable, and he seemed content spending his days in the garden or working on his editing from home. Then came the call that shattered my world. I was at work when my phone rang. An unfamiliar male voice greeted me. "Mrs. Thompson? This is Officer Rodriguez from the Highway Patrol." My heart dropped into my stomach. "Yes?" I managed to squeak out. "I'm sorry to inform you that your husband, Michael Thompson, has been in a serious accident." The rest of the conversation was a blur. Words like head-on collision and "didn't make it" floated around me, but I couldn't process them. It wasn't until I heard myself thanking the officer and hanging up that reality began to sink in. Michael was gone. The next week was a haze of grief and disbelief. I moved through the motions of planning the funeral like a robot, barely able to comprehend what was happening. The day before the funeral, I steeled myself and called Karen. I thought she deserved to hear about her son's death from me, not from some impersonal newspaper obituary. "Hello?" Karen's sharp voice answered. "Karen, it's Chloe," I said, my voice trembling. It's about Michael. He's gone. There was an accident." There was silence on the other end of the line. Then, to my shock, Karen's voice came back, dripping with venom. "This is your fault," she hissed. "You forced him to work so hard, driving that truck to pay for your fancy house. You killed my son." I was stunned. "Karen, that's not." "Save it," she snapped. "I expect you to give him the best funeral money can buy." But don't expect a penny from us. You made your bed, now lie in it. The line went dead. I stood there, phone in hand, tears streaming down my face. How could she be so cruel? How could she blame me for this? The day of Michael's funeral dawned gray and drizzly, matching my mood perfectly. The church was packed. Michael had been well liked in the community, and it seemed like half the town had turned out to pay their respects. After the service, as people filed past to offer their condolences, I was struck by the absence of Michael's mother and sister. They hadn't even bothered to show up to their own son and brother's funeral. Dad reached out and squeezed my hand. Their loss, sweetie. We're family, and we'll get through this together. As we pulled into our driveway, something seemed off. The lights were on in the house, which was strange, because I was sure I'd turned everything off before we left. Did you leave any lights on, Dad? I asked, frowning. He shook his head. No, I don't think so. As we got closer, I could see movement inside the house. My heart started racing. Were we being robbed? On the day of Michael's funeral, no less? I helped Dad out of the car and into his wheelchair, my mind racing. Should I call the police? But as we approached the front door, I heard familiar voices inside. My blood ran cold as I recognized them. I pushed open the door to find Karen and Emily in our living room, surrounded by boxes and pieces of furniture. What the hell is going on here? I demanded, my grief momentarily forgotten in the face of this outrageous intrusion. Karen turned to me, her face a mask of false sympathy. Oh, Chloe, dear. We're just helping you pack up. After all, you can't possibly afford to keep this place now that Michael's gone. I was speechless. Emily chimed in, her voice sickeningly sweet. Don't worry, you can go back to your father's apartment. It's cozy. I could feel the rage building inside me. Get out, I said, my voice low and dangerous. Get out of my house right now. Karen had the audacity to look offended. This house belongs to us now. All of Michael's property does. We're his real family, after all. Like hell you are, I exploded. Where were you today? At his funeral? Oh, that's right, you couldn't be bothered to show up. Karen waved her hand dismissively. We were busy making arrangements. Now, be a good girl and start packing. We'll need you out by tomorrow. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. These women hadn't shed a tear for Michael, hadn't even attended his funeral, and now they were trying to kick us out of our home? I'm calling the police, I said, pulling out my phone. Karen and Emily exchanged worried glances. They clearly hadn't expected me to fight back. Now, Chloe, Karen began, but I cut her off. No. You have exactly 5 minutes to get out of my house before I call the cops. This is my home. Michael and I bought it together. You have no right to be here. Maybe it was the steel in my voice, or the fire in my eyes, but Karen and Emily finally seemed to realize they'd gone too far. They gathered their things and left, but not before Karen turned to me with a sneer. This isn't over, Chloe. You'll be hearing from our lawyers. The days following Michael's funeral were a blur of grief, anxiety, and paperwork. I threw myself into sorting out Michael's affairs, partly to keep busy and partly out of fear that Karen and Emily would try to swoop in and take what wasn't theirs. A week after the funeral, I received a call from a local law firm. My heart raced as I answered, fearing it was Karen making good on her threat of legal action. Mrs. Thompson, a crisp, professional voice asked. This is James Anderson from Anderson and Partners. I'm calling regarding your late husband's will. I felt a glimmer of hope. His will? I didn't know he had one. Yes, ma'am. Mr. Thompson came to see us about 6 months ago. He asked that we contact you in the event of his passing. I scheduled an appointment for the next day, my mind reeling. Why hadn't Michael told me about this? What did it mean? The next morning, I wheeled Dad into Mr. Anderson's office. The lawyer greeted us warmly, his kind eyes crinkling at the corners. Mrs. Thompson, Mr. Smith, thank you for coming in, he said, gesturing for us to settle near his desk. I'm sorry for your loss. Mr. Anderson opened a file on his desk. Now, as I mentioned on the phone, your husband came to see us to draft his will. He was very clear about his wishes. I held my breath as Mr. Anderson began to read. I, Michael Thompson, being of sound mind, do hereby bequeath all my worldly possessions to my beloved wife, Chloe Thompson. I gasped. Dad's grip on my hand tightened. Mr. Anderson continued, this includes our home, my truck, and all our savings. It is my wish that Chloe use these resources to care for herself and her father, Mark Smith, whom I have come to love as my own. Tears were streaming down my face now. Even from beyond the grave, Michael was taking care of us. There's more, Mr. Anderson said gently. Mr. Thompson left a letter for you. He handed me an envelope. With shaking hands, I opened it and began to read. My dearest Chloe. If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I'm so sorry for leaving you and Mark. Please know that you two were the best thing that ever happened to me. I made this will because I know how my mother and sister can be. I didn't want to worry you, but I needed to make sure you and Mark were protected if anything happened to me. You're my real family, Chloe. You and Mark. Not them. Take care of each other. Live your lives to the fullest. And know that I'll always be watching over you. All my love, Michael. I clutched the letter to my chest, sobbing. Dad was crying too, his weathered hand patting my arm. Mr. Anderson gave us a moment before speaking again. Mrs. Thompson, there's one more thing. Your husband's truck was insured. Given the circumstances of the accident, the insurance company will be paying out the full value of the policy. I looked up, sniffling. What does that mean? It means, Mr. Anderson said with a small smile, that you'll be receiving a substantial sum. Enough to pay off your mortgage and then some. As we left the lawyer's office, I felt like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. We were going to be okay. Michael had made sure of it. As we pulled into our driveway, I noticed a familiar car parked on the street. My heart sank as I recognized Karen's sleek sedan. Oh no, I muttered. What now? Sure enough, Karen and Emily were waiting on our front porch. But this time, I wasn't afraid. I had Michael's letter in my pocket and the strength of his love in my heart. Chloe, Karen began as we approached, her voice sickly sweet. We need to talk about Michael's estate. I stood tall, looking her straight in the eye. No, Karen. We don't. Michael left everything to me. It's all legal and official. And do you want to know why? Because we were his real family. Not you. Now, please leave. You're trespassing on my property. For once, Karen was speechless. Emily tugged at her arm, whispering urgently. With one last venomous glare, they got in their car and drove away. The weeks following our meeting with the lawyer were a whirlwind of activity. I threw myself into settling Michael's affairs, grateful for the distraction from my grief. The insurance payout came through, and true to Mr. Anderson's word, it was enough to pay off our mortgage, with plenty left over. One afternoon, as I was going through Michael's desk, I came across a small notebook. Curious, I opened it and found pages filled with his messy scrawl. It was a journal of sorts, filled with his thoughts and plans for our future. Thinking about starting a college fund for our future kids, one entry read. Want to make sure they have the best start in life. My heart clenched. We had talked about having children someday, but had decided to wait until we were more financially stable. Now, reading Michael's private hopes and dreams, I felt a fresh wave of grief wash over me. Oh, Michael, I whispered, clutching the notebook to my chest. We had so many plans. That night, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. My mind kept drifting to the journal, to the future we'd never have. When I finally drifted off, I dreamed of Michael. He was smiling, holding out his hand to me. It's okay, Chloe, he said in my dream. Everything's going to be alright. I woke up the next morning feeling different. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but something had changed. As I got ready for work, a wave of nausea hit me. I barely made it to the bathroom in time. But as the days went by, the morning sickness persisted. At first, I chalked it up to stress and grief. But a small voice in the back of my mind whispered another possibility. Finally, after a week of this, I found myself standing in the pharmacy aisle, staring at pregnancy tests. With trembling hands, I bought one and hurried home. The 3 minutes I waited for the result were the longest of my life. When I finally looked at the test, I saw 2 clear blue lines. I sank to the bathroom floor, a mix of emotions overwhelming me. Joy, fear, grief, hope, they all swirled together in a dizzying cocktail. "Chloe?" Dad's voice came through the door. "Everything okay in there?" I opened the door, tears streaming down my face. Dad's expression immediately changed from concern to alarm. "What's wrong, sweetie?" he asked. I held up the test, my hand shaking. "I'm pregnant, Dad." I fell into his arms, sobbing. He held me, stroking my hair like he used to when I was a little girl. "It's okay," he murmured. "It's going to be okay. You're not alone, Chloe. And this baby is a gift. A piece of Michael that will live on." His words struck a chord in me. This baby was a part of Michael, a continuation of our love. Suddenly, the fear began to recede, replaced by a fierce determination. "You're right," I said, wiping my eyes. "This baby is a gift. And we're going to be okay." Dad smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "That's my girl. Now, let's get you something to eat. You're eating for 2 now, after all." As we made our way to the kitchen, I felt a sense of hope blooming in my chest. Yes, the road ahead would be challenging. But with my father by my side and Michael's child growing inside me, I knew we could face anything. As my belly grew with our child, I found strength I never knew I had. Dad was my rock, always there with a kind word or a helping hand. We settled into a new routine, just the 2 of us, eagerly anticipating the arrival of the newest member of our little family. One sunny afternoon, as I was tending to the garden Dad and I had planted together, I heard a car pull up. My heart sank as I recognized Karen's sedan. What could they possibly want now? I made my way to the front of the house, one hand instinctively cradling my swollen belly. Karen and Emily stood on our porch, looking uncomfortable and slightly desperate. "Chloe," Karen began, her voice lacking its usual sharpness. We need to talk to you." I raised an eyebrow but said nothing, waiting for her to continue. Emily chimed in, her eyes darting around nervously. "We've hit some hard times. We were wondering if we could stay in your father's old apartment. Just until we get back on our feet." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After everything they'd put us through, they had the audacity to ask for more? "I'm sorry," I said, my voice firm but calm. "That's not possible. I don't want to communicate with you anymore." Karen's eyes narrowed as they fell on my pregnant belly. Her face contorted with a mix of shock and disgust. You're pregnant?" she spat. "Already? You little prostitute. I can't believe you've already found a new man. Michael's body isn't even cold in the ground." I felt a surge of anger, but I pushed it down. I didn't make excuses and say that it was Michael's child. I didn't want my baby to have such a grandmother and aunt. Instead, I smiled, a small, secretive smile that seemed to unnerve Karen even more. "My personal life is none of your concern," I said calmly. "Now, I think it's time for you to leave." Karen looked like she wanted to say more, but something in my expression must have stopped her. She turned on her heel, grabbing Emily's arm. I watched as they drove away, feeling a sense of peace wash over me. I had stood my ground, protected my family, and maintained my dignity. Michael would have been proud.